I'm Eddie Muller, welcoming you again to Noir Alley, and our last offering in Noirvember 2017. After screening movies for 8 months in this dark corner of the TCM universe, we finally bring you an offering from one of the 20th century's undisputed masters of sociopathic psychology and searing suspense. I'm referring, of course, to Patricia Highsmith, the author of today's tale, Strangers on a Train. The film is based on Highsmith's first published book, and over the following 5 decades, her 22 novels and countless short stories, many of them adapted to film, created a legacy as formidable as that of any crime fiction author. Her work stands with the best of James M. Cain, Georges Simenon, Jim Thompson, and David Goodis, although she often gets left off such lists because, take a guess, she's a woman. If all Highsmith had written were her 5 novels featuring charming sociopath Tom Ripley, she'd still rate a top spot in the Noir Novelists Hall of Fame. Now, Alfred Hitchcock was in dire straits professionally when he was given a copy in galley form of Highsmith's debut. Fittingly, it was on a cross-country train trip heading west. By the time he'd gotten back to Hollywood, Hitchcock had secured the rights to the book. He was convinced that turning this story into a film as fast as he could would put his career back on track. He'd suffered back-to-back failures with his 2 previous films, Under Capricorn and Stage Fright, and was stalled in the development of his next project, I Confess. Highsmith's tale of strangers who agree to commit crisscrossing murders would be Hitchcock's ticket back to the limelight. But first, he had to find a screenwriter, preferably a big name, who could transform Highsmith's shockingly plausible study of psychopathic behavior into an entertaining amusement, one packed with Hitchcockian set pieces. Now, plenty of writers shied away until the story landed on the desk of hard-boiled poet Raymond Chandler, famous for his best-selling series of Philip Marlowe detective novels, as well as screenplays such as Double Indemnity and The Blue Dahlia. Chandler jumped on board. At this point, he was hard up for more Hollywood cash. Long and exasperating story conferences between director and writer held at Chandler's home in La Jolla led to Hitchcock silently walking out during one of the writer's epic drunken tirades. Although Chandler did finish a draft, toiling in total isolation, Hitchcock had already sworn him off the project, and he had no intention of using anything Chandler had written. Instead, he turned to a virtual unknown, a woman named Chenzi Ormond, who'd been a researcher and secretary for Ben Hecht and a dialogue writer for Sam Goldwyn. Maybe she reminded Hitch of his one-time protege, Joan Harrison. Under intense deadline pressure, Ormond banged out a fine script with the help of longtime Hitchcock associate Barbara Keane and his wife, Alma Reville. One of the crucial differences from book to film was Guy Haynes being changed from an actual killer to an innocent man framed for a murder he didn't commit. Now, Warner Brothers had no interest in making a film with 2 guilty protagonists, even if they could somehow sneak it past the production code. Guy also went from being an architect on the page to a tennis champ on screen, and Hitchcock's choice for the role was rising star William Holden. But Warner Brothers thought that Holden, who would have to be borrowed from Columbia Pictures, lacked sufficient leading man charisma. Instead, Hitchcock went with the studio's suggestion of Farley Granger, with whom the director had previously worked on his 1948 thriller Rope.
Aren't you Guy Haynes? Oh, sure. I saw you blast Faraday right off the court in South Orange last season. Made the semifinals, didn't you? Yeah. Oh, I certainly admire people who do things.
Now, for the flashier part of loony mama's boy Bruno Anthony, whom the director clearly saw as a homosexual, Hitchcock was inspired to cast Robert Walker.
Why, you maniac! But Guy, you wanted it. We planned it on the train together, remember?
Now, the actor was known for playing shy, sensitive types in films like The Clock and Since You Went Away, but he'd recently suffered a publicized mental breakdown, the result of his wife, Jennifer Jones, dumping him for producer David O. Selznick. Hitchcock felt that Walker, not long out of a sanitarium, would bring something dark and disturbing to his normally charming and reticent screen persona. And man, was he ever right. This film also marked the first collaboration between Alfred Hitchcock and director of photography Robert Burks, who during the years that followed was a crucial collaborator on some of the director's greatest films. Burks's work here is nothing short of miraculous, as he combines the deep shadows of classic noir with surprising and inventive camera techniques, resulting in one of the most visually stylish films of Hitchcock's career. Co-starring Ruth Roman, Leo G. Carroll, Casey Rogers, and Marion Lorne, and featuring an early role for the director's daughter, Pat Hitchcock, from 1951, here's a classic thriller brought to you by two masters of suspense, Patricia Highsmith and Alfred Hitchcock. Climb aboard for Strangers on a Train.